Brothers and sisters, it's Earl Quiller from the Old Macedonia Baptist Church, and I'm feeling grateful. I'm grateful that God has allowed me to see the light of another day. Grateful that He has brought us all to this point in 2020. We are on the cusp of a new year, and if we are blessed to see 2021, we should still indeed be grateful for that. Also, I am grateful to be sharing another Bible study lesson with you. The title for this lesson today is Don't Stop, Keep Going, Keep Pushing. Don't stop, keep going, keep pushing. And this Bible study lesson is going to be a lesson in faith, prayer, patience, and perseverance. Our supplemental scripture will be coming from Isaiah 46, verses 3 through 10, and it reads, Listen to me, descendants of Jacob, all you who remain in Israel. I have cared for you since you were born. Yes, I carried you before you were born. I will be your God throughout your lifetime, until your hair is white with age. I made you and I will care for you. I will carry you along and save you. To whom will you compare me? Who is my equal? Some people pour out their silver and gold and hire a craftsman to make a god from it. Then they bow down and worship it. They carry it around their shoulders. And when they sit it down, it stays there. It can't even move. And when someone prays to it, there is no answer. It can't rescue anyone from trouble. Do not forget this. Keep it in mind. Remember this, you guilty ones. Remember the things I have done in the past. For I alone am God. I am God, and there is none like me. Only I can tell you the future before it happens. Everything I plan will come to pass, for I do whatever I wish. And the supplemental scripture is telling us that God will be with us throughout our entire life. He was with us from before we were born. He will be with us throughout our lifetime. That means that no matter what we go through, He will still continue to be God and be God in our lives. And that's a reason for us to be grateful, and we should count that as a blessing. He isn't a part-time God. He is God to us all the time, and we are grateful that He is. Also, the supplemental scripture is telling us that He answers prayer. And that's something that we should remember if we are going to not stop and keep going and keep pushing, that no matter what we face in our life, no matter what we may be going through, we got a God that is there with us and has promised to never leave us throughout our entire life. He knew us before we were born, while we were being formed in our mother's womb. And while we are going through different trials and tribulations in our lives, His presence is still with us. It's been a tough year. 2020 will be remembered for a lot of different reasons, and this year has presented us with challenges that we've never seen before and hope to never see again. But it is God who has brought us to this point in 2020. Despite how tough it's been for us, or what hurdles we had to overcome, or any challenges that we had to face to this point. So we are indeed blessed to be here. There were some that we know of that started out with us in 2020 that are no longer here, and I pray for all of the families that are dealing with bereavement right now. Um, we're blessed to be here. And I know that some of us may have limped along to this point. Some of us may be in the middle of a struggle right now, but we are indeed blessed to be here. We're on the cusp of a new year, and if we make it to see 2021, we should count that as a blessing. Under normal circumstances, the new year is symbolic with a fresh start and new beginnings. And this year, those sentiments are multiplied exponentially with everything that's been going on. I know that everybody can't wait until that ball drops on 11/59, December the 31st, and we start 2021, because the new year is bringing in hope of a fresh start and new beginnings. But I wish that we could turn the page on our issues that we deal with in life as easy as we could turn the page on our calendars. The effects of some of the things that happened to us in 2020, because we have been through some things, and the effects of those things will have some carryover into 2021. Some of us are dealing with loss, the loss of a job, the loss of a loved one, and we're going to have to sort those things out in the new year. Some of us are dealing with grief. Quarantine has tested some marriages. Some of those marriages have taken a turn for the worse. And I won't even begin to talk to the parents about the challenges that we face with this homeschool. 2020 has been a year full of hits. We've taken some, and we are all looking for it to come to an end. In this Bible study lesson, don't stop, keep going, keep pushing, is for those who have taken some hits all along the way. Those of us heading into the new year with some old issues that still need to be straightened out. This lesson is for those of us who are learning or are going to have to learn to adjust to a new normal in 2021. For those who may be dealing with the chronic illness such as cancer or diabetes or anything chronic that you can't just put down. This Bible study lesson is for you. And I know that you're tired. I know that you're frustrated. And I know that it's heavy. But don't stop. Keep going. Keep pushing. The focal point of our lesson will be based in Mark chapter 9, verses 14 through 29. And as we go through this lesson and as we read these scriptures, let's reflect on 4 principles: faith, patience, prayer, and perseverance, and see what we can learn from this word and how we can apply it to our life so that we will be fortified with a renewed faith and focus as we head into 2021. Faith, patience, prayer, and perseverance. Those are 4 pillars that we're going to need, 4 ingredients that we're going to have with us if we're going to be successful going into 2021. We're going to have to walk by faith, because with everything that we just been through in 2020, some of us may not see an easy path for us in 2021. There's going to be some things that we're going to have to work our way through, and right now we can't see our way. So we're going to have faith as we go. We're going to have patience as we go into 2021, because there's going to be some situations or some carryover effects from some of the things and situations that we had to deal with in 2020 that we have to get sorted out in 2021. And it may not be immediate. Just because the ball drops on 11:59 December the 31st, that doesn't mean that on January the 1st, 2021, all of our issues will be resolved. It's a process. Some of those things are going to require some patience for us to get through. We're going to have to pray our way through it. We're going to have to remain in constant communication with God. I know that we talk to our friends, we talk to those around us. There are people that we have confidence in, but we should always keep our lines of communication with God open, because we know that we have to continue in prayer, and we're going to have to persevere. There's going to be a certain level of perseverance that we have to have, because there's a certain level of toughness that we're going to have to push through, and we're going to have to ask God to give us the strength in order for us to not stop, keep going, and to keep on pushing. So we're going to have faith, patience, prayer, and perseverance in order for us to keep going. So our scripture focus is going to be coming from Mark chapter 9. Mark chapter 9, starting at verse number 14. And we're going to go from verse number 14 through 29 for the duration of our Bible study lesson. So we're going to talk a little bit in these next scriptures about patience and perseverance. So starting at Mark 9, verse number 14. And it reads, "When they returned to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd surrounding them, and some teachers of religious law were arguing with them. When the crowd saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with awe, and they ran to greet him. 'What is all this arguing about?' Jesus asked. One of the men in the crowd spoke up and said, 'Teacher, I have brought my son so you could heal him. He is possessed by an evil spirit that won't let him talk. And whenever this spirit seizes him, it throws him violently to the ground. Then he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast out the evil spirit, but they couldn't do it.'" Let's stop right here before we go a little bit further. So here it is. We're describing, or the scripture is describing, a situation where there is a man who has a son that has a chronic condition. And he brought his son to some people that he thought could help his son. And he did not get the results that he wanted. Now, I just want us to stop right here, and I want us to think about this from a practical perspective, because there are some of us who are dealing with some situations right now. And we've been carrying those situations for a very long time. And we've been going to people, and we've been looking for answers, and we've been going to the people who are supposed to have the answers, and they don't have the answers. And it seems like our situation isn't getting any better. Now, I want you to just stop and just have a little bit of empathy if this isn't you, and just imagine if you were in that situation. How would this make you feel? So whenever we're reading the scripture and we're thinking about this man in this situation who has a son, somebody that he loves, who is dealing with a situation and he can't help him. And he took him to people that he thought could help him, and he's still not getting any results. Imagine how that must feel. There are some of us right now who are carrying around issues and burdens and problems and challenges, and it seems like there is nobody around us who can help us get through this situation. That's enough to wear on anybody. If you think about it, whenever you have an acute illness, whenever something comes on you, all of a sudden, if it's a sharp pain, you can't wait for it to go away. Can you imagine if you were dealing with a persistent problem, how this would weigh on you? And this is exactly where this man finds himself, the situation that this man finds himself in. He's got a son whom he loves. And the scripture doesn't tell us that, but we can infer because he is seeking out help for his son. That means that he has a certain level of concern and care about his son, and he wants to get him the help that he needs. And it seems like he can't get it. And it's some of us right now that there's some situations that we've been placed in through no fault of our own. Some of it may be by our own fault. It doesn't matter how we got there. We may be there. But we are carrying around some issues, and we just can't put them down. And no matter where we turn, we can't seem to find an answer. But there is hope. Let's keep on going. Verse number 19 says, Jesus said to them, "You faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So they brought the boy. But when the evil spirit saw Jesus, it threw the child into a violent convulsion, and he fell to the ground, writhing and foaming at the mouth. And he asked him, "How long has this been happening?" Jesus asked the boy's father. And he replied, "Since he was a little boy. The spirit often throws him into the fire or into the water, trying to kill him. Have mercy on us and help us if you can." It's a lot to unpack right here. So let's start unpacking. So here it is. Jesus is asking this man, how long have you been dealing with this situation? And the scripture doesn't tell us how old the boy is at the time. But the response from the man says, since he was a little boy. So that's letting us know that this isn't something that just happened. This is something that he's been dealing with in this situation for quite a while. And then get this, it says that the spirit often throws him into the fire or into the water, trying to kill him. I want to point out some things right here. For those of you that are going through a tough situation right now. For those of you who, no matter what you do, it seems like you continue to be attacked by the enemy. And the spirit is trying, or the enemy is trying everything that he can to kill you. But I want to point out something, that despite all of his efforts, you are still here. You still here. Despite all the attacks, despite all the different strategies that he tried to use to destroy you, you are still here. Here it is, verse number 22 is saying that the spirit often throws him into the fire or into the water, trying to kill him. In other words, it doesn't matter how it kills him. The objective is for him to die. But for whatever reason, he is still here. So for you out there who may have taken a hit, who are dealing with something right now, and I know that it's a tough situation and it's a heavy situation for you right now, you are still here. And while you are still here, you will still have a chance. That's a reason for you to not stop, for you to keep going and keep on pushing. You're still here in spite of the enemy's best efforts to destroy you. Another thing that I want to call out in this particular scripture passage that we're looking at is it doesn't say that the boy himself asked for help. It doesn't say, or the scripture doesn't reveal to us that the boy talked to Jesus and requested that Christ helped him. But his father was interceding on his behalf. See, sometimes some of us may be going through some things or going through some issues, and we may not be in a situation where we can pray for ourselves. That's why we got to have people around us who have a relationship with God, who will take us to get the help that we need, who will pray on our behalf. The scripture also doesn't tell us that the boy pulls himself out of the fire or the water. So there must be somebody around him that is helping him get out of those situations. That's why you need to be careful about the type of people that you have around you when you are going through a particular situation. Because some people are there to truly help, and some people are there to add on more hurt. If you got somebody that's in your life that's just an observer, you need to question that person's motive and why they are there. And the last thing that I want to call out in this particular scripture passage, because this impacts us all, it impacts us all. Something else that the scripture is telling us, and I'm going to read verse number 22 again, where it says that the Spirit often throws him into the fire or into the water, trying to kill him. And get the last part of verse number 22. It says, have mercy on us and help us if you can. Here it is, this man is addressing Jesus this way. See, there are some things that we have to deal with, and because we've been dealing with them for so long, that they have a way of eroding our faith, and unbelief will start to creep in. You've gone to the doctor. You expect good news, and you continue to get a bad report. You prayed for your relationship, and it doesn't seem like anything is changing in your relationship. That burden that you are carrying is starting to weigh heavy on you. When you first started out, you were able to bear it, and now it's getting heavier and heavier with each step that you take, and it's starting to erode your faith. But what I want to tell you, and what the scripture is going to reveal to us a little bit later in our Bible study lesson today, is that God is still God. He still has the power. He is still in control, and he is still able. There's no conditions on him and what he can do. So if we are going to not stop, if we are going to keep going, and if we are going to keep pushing, there's a certain level of patience and perseverance that we have to have. Let's keep on going, because we said that there were 4 pillars that this Bible study lesson is going to teach us. And this is going to be a lesson in faith, in prayer, in patience, and perseverance. And for the first part of these scriptures that we reviewed in Mark chapter 9, verses 14 through 29, but we've covered 14 through 22. We saw where there was a father who has a son who is dealing with a chronic condition that he can't put down. And it takes a certain level of patience or perseverance for an individual to continue to fight through those types of situations. If you've never dealt with a person in your family who has had a chronic illness, or if you've never had a chronic illness, or if you don't have a relative that may be in a situation that's dealing with addiction, or they may be incarcerated, or they may be in a situation that's not going to be resolved quickly, or if you don't have a child with a disability, or if none of these things have happened to you, or you're not dealing with grief and you have to go through that process, there's going to be some things that are chronic situations in our life that we can't immediately put down. And in order for us to get through those things, it's going to require for us to have a certain level of patience and perseverance. Because even whenever we expect to get certain results and we may not get those results, we're going to have to continue to push through. There's a certain level of grit and toughness that you have to have in order for you to keep going and to keep pushing through those situations. The second half of the scripture passage in Mark 9, starting at verse number 23 and through 29, is going to deal a little bit with those other 2 pillars that we talked about with faith and prayer. And it reads, starting at verse number 23, what do you mean if I can? Jesus asked, anything is possible if a person believes. And the father instantly cried out, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. Let me stop right here just for a moment. Because there are some of us who are bona fide believers, who know that God is able. But if we are being honest, There are some situations to where we get so frustrated and the pain is so severe that we have to deal with unbelief, to where doubt starts to creep in our mind. And it's those situations where we have to remember to continue to turn our face to the one who can help us. We have to continue to be vigilant and guard ourselves against allowing unbelief to creep in to steal our faith. I could imagine that as this man watched his son suffer, that this man prayed and he didn't see any results. And I can imagine that this had a negative effect on him. We're no different than him, because some of us are dealing with some situations. And if we're honest, some of the situations that we are dealing with have eroded our faith. Oh no, this ain't gonna be a very comfortable Bible study lesson, but it's gonna be very, very relevant. And prayerfully, when we get finished with this scripture, we will have a renewed or fortified faith and a renewed focus. Because the purpose of us going through these scriptures is for us to reflect on ourselves, not to point the finger at anybody else, but for us to be honest with ourselves, with the situations that we're dealing with and the things that we're going through. Some of us have to deal with unbelief. Let's go back to verse number 23, because here's Jesus' position. And Jesus is saying, what do you mean if I can? In other words, he's letting you know that he is the God who created the heavens and the earth. He knew us before we were born. The scripture tells us that God will be with us throughout our entire lifetime. The one who created the heaven and earth has the power to do all things. So here is Jesus' position whenever he is responding to the man, whenever the man asked him in verse number 22, help us if you can. And Jesus says, what do you mean if I can? And that's the same thing that he's saying to us. In the middle of that situation that we dealing with that look like it's impossible. What do you mean if I can? Jesus asked. And then he goes on further, and scripture says anything is possible if a person believes. And then I want you to look at the posture of the Father. Because a lot of us find ourselves in this position. The Father instantly cried out, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. It sounds like he a confused man. If you just read that statement, the first part of it say, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. But let's unwrap that just a little bit, and let's be honest, and let's think about ourselves. There are some of us who really, truly love God, who are trying our best to live by his principles, who do things and who come across situations that are outside of the span of our control. And it's in those situations and in those times where we struggle with a certain level of doubt. Or let me give you another synonym for that doubt: unbelief. Yeah, we believe, but we still have to deal with that unbelief. But we need to take the same position that this Father is taking. Because what he is saying is he's confessing it. He's saying, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. One of the things that we talk about, we say that faith is the evidence of things hoped for, the substance of things not seen. Sometimes that means that we don't walk by sight. We walk by faith. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to just be real with you. That you really have to have a strong, strong faith to continue to keep on pushing in spite of what your eyes are seeing. Not only in spite of what your eyes are seeing, what you may be feeling. God, help our unbelief and give us the strength to push through. Help us to look past the situation and look to you, Father. Help our unbelief. Give us the strength that we need to continue to walk by faith. We all need to be like that, Father, and be honest with ourselves. Yeah, we believe, but we struggle with unbelief. So, Father, help us overcome our unbelief. Verse number 25. When Jesus saw that the crowd of onlookers was growing, he rebuked the evil spirit. Listen, you spirit that makes this boy unable to hear and speak, he said. I command you to come out of this child and never enter him again. Then the spirit screamed and threw the boy into another violent convulsion and left him. The boy appeared to be dead. A murmur ran through the crowd as people said, he's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and helped him to his feet, and he stood up. I'm going to stop right here before we go into verse number 28 and 29. Because sometimes, right before our breakthroughs, right before the situation gets better, that's whenever it seems like it's the worst that it could be. And sometimes you'll have people around you who might not necessarily be tied to the situation or have a vested interest, a true vested interest in the situation, besides it just being something for them to observe. They might start to count you out or say negative things. He's dead. It's over with. It's done. But God has the final say. Another thing I want to call out, if we're going to continue to keep going and to keep pressing and to keep pushing, is we have to have selective hearing. So what I mean by that is whenever you listen and you hear with your ears. Yeah, you hear with your ears, but there's some things that you internalize. That's what you really heard. There may be some people around you who are talking, and yeah, you hear them talking, but there's some of those things that you're going to have to let go. You can't internalize some of those things. So here it is. You got this young boy who Christ has cast the spirit out of him. And it's just like this with life. Sometimes whenever you're right there on the cusp of a breakthrough, it seems like the night is its darkest, or the situation or the burden is its heaviest. And to some around you, they may give up. But we have to continue to allow God to intervene and to hear him. And here it is. Jesus took the boy by the hand. He reached out to him and he stood up. Now we said that there were 4 pillars that we are going to have to lean on in order for us to keep going. There's going to have to be a level of patience and perseverance. There's going to have to be some prayer, and there's going to have to be faith. Verse number 28 reads, afterward, when Jesus was alone in the house with his disciples, they asked him, why couldn't we cast out that evil spirit? And Jesus replied, this kind can be cast out only by prayer. And in the King James Version, it says this kind cannot be cast out only by prayer and fasting. Why am I talking about this? Because if we go back to the start of the scripture passage, you had a man who had a son who was dealing with a chronic situation. And he took his son to the disciples. The disciples had been endowed with the spirit to cast out demons. But they were trying to cast this particular demon out, and they were unable to. So this led to a level of frustration in the man. So they were doing everything that they could. These are the disciples doing everything that they could to cast this spirit out of the boy. And they were not successful. And then Jesus is responding to them whenever they asked him, why couldn't we cast out that evil spirit? Jesus replied, this kind can be cast out only by prayer. I'm calling this out because there are some situations or some things in our life where we're doing everything that we know how to do. We've taken that situation to doctors. We've taken that situation to people. We've tried every solution that we know and none of them seem to work. There's going to be some things in our life that will only be changed through the power of prayer. So we're talking about not stopping. We're talking about keep going and keep pushing. For anybody out there that may be going through or struggling with a situation, I don't care how hard it gets, never stop praying. Never let unbelief creep in till it gets you to the point where you turn your back or you stop communicating with the one who can help you or do something about your situation. Sometimes there isn't something that we can do about it. And I know that it's hard, especially for those of us who are independent and strong-willed and strong-minded. We think that because we're strong-willed and strong-minded that we can do it. There's some things that are too big and too heavy and too hard for us to handle. It's some things, the only thing that we can do, whenever it seems like that's the only thing that we can do. Let me rephrase that. The best thing that we can do is to continue in prayer about that situation. So don't stop. Keep going. Keep pushing. In order for us to keep on going, we're going to need faith, patience, prayer, and perseverance. But the bottom line of it all is we get ready to close. And I just want to call 3 particular scripture passages to your mind before we close. Psalm 62:11, it tells us that God has spoken plainly. And I've heard it many times that power, oh God, belongs to you. So power belongs to God. Jeremiah 32 verse number 17 reads, O sovereign Lord, you made the heavens and earth by your strong hand and powerful arm. Nothing is too hard for you. So whenever we're dealing with a situation and we seem like we can't do anything about it, we need to continue to reach out to the one who is able to help us. Matthew 19:26 reads, Jesus looked at them intently and said, humanly speaking, it is impossible. But with God, everything is possible. So for those of us who 2020 has placed us in some situations that seem impossible, it seems like we'll never reconcile that relationship. It seems like some people will never feel like they'll never get healed. It seems like they'll never be able to overcome the loss or the fall that they took. They've been trying and they can't find a job. I want you to remember to continue to look to God, because he is able and he has all power and he can do all things, and there is nothing that is impossible with him. I love you. I am grateful that God has brought us to this point in 2020. If we are blessed to see 2021, I am eagerly anticipating the day that we will be able to fellowship again in person. Y'all take care and be blessed.